Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Real World Blockchain, the podcast where you guys can learn how your business can thrive thanks to the blockchain industry, AI, cryptocurrencies, and other fancy tech. So, hi, Niles, and hi, Zoe. How are you guys?
Oh, I'm doing wicked fine. How are you?
I'm great. All right, so today we're going to talk about a huge news. If I tell you guys Igan Layer, do you know what that is about?
Yeah. They're exploding onto the scene. I guess it's been a while now, but the big thing is restaking. And they've kicked off an entire new paradigm of how Ethereum works and being able to use your ETH that's already staked to then secure other applications through their Eigen layer.
That's wonderful. And funnily, as you guys know, it's always a good thing to raise funds by a good means to raise funds when you're just saying, "Oh, we're launching a token." But the funny thing is that their own Eigen token was not confirmed. It hadn't been confirmed for quite a long time, so that was interesting because. They were just collecting incentives for early users by having people pouring money into the chain, and so they had $15 billion of deposits, and then could confirm that they launched their token and their restaking protocol. So, Niles, what can you tell us about that restaking protocol?
Sure. With like restaking, what you're doing is either you can stake directly with them, or what's more interesting is taking these liquid staking tokens that we see with like Lido and Rocket Pool, and then using them as your staking collateral to then actually secure other applications and possibly either side chains or roll ups through this Eigen layer. And the first product that we're seeing that is launching live is the Eigen data availability layer, which is very similar to Celestia, if you've ever heard that, where this is a quote unquote dumb or lazy chain where you're not actually executing any transactions or applications in this blockchain, but you are using it to store your blockchain data. And now we are seeing something where you can use ETH as a way to start bootstrapping these projects.
Oh, that's quite interesting. And you guys might have read that they offered. So the first supply was the total supply was announced, and it's 1.67 billion Eigen tokens. The real number is 1.673 something ish, and the foundation, the Eigen Foundation, so the non-profit organization behind the whole chain. Said basically that when you encode the phrase open innovation onto a classic telephone keypad, that gives you a code, and that's basically the exact number of the exact amount of tokens that will be supplied here. Though, so it's always very esoteric. Like, how did you find the proper number of tokens? And most of the time, you can see that. Well, let me throw a coin and see. Let me toss a coin and let's see if it happens. So
Yeah, do some math, see what happens, add a power. Who
yeah,
knows?
most of the time it's more a fetish for one specific number. But still, have you guys heard about the points mechanism of Eigenlayer? That on the other hand is quite innovative. So I wanted to know if you guys knew about it.
Yeah, this is actually something that we've seen with Blast, which is another layer two on Ethereum, where based on your activity, you are awarded points. And then based on these points, you get what Eigenlayer is dubbing a stake drop that allows you to claim their tokens rather than an airdrop where we've seen it's either sort of a blanket distribution to anybody who has a wallet or has participated. But now there are certain activities that accrue more points, and therefore you get more tokens when the token is actually launched. And that is the route that Eigenlayer has decided to go. And I know that for the last several months, people have just been scrambling to acquire these points. And not off the top of my head, I can't remember this project, but there's another project that allows people to actually trade their points before the actual airdrop. And now we've added like a completely new layer of what is happening when these tokens are distributed, because like you can add speculation on top of the points.
Zoe, what's your take on that, both technically and ethically? What do you think of that?
I think it's super promising and exciting, really from both perspectives.
And what do you guys think in terms of incentives? Is it's too bad we don't have our tech expert Farah here. He could talk a lot about game theory, but you guys know game theory as well. What do you think about the? Is there maybe a perverse incentive that we don't see about the way that people stake their tokens? Can we imagine? Brainstorm and imagine a safety failure here, or does that seem quite innovative to you and intelligent at the moment?
It seems innovative and intelligent to me from that perspective. I mean, I
Okay.
really think it's, building something. And again, if we've seen it before in other places, then that kind of serves as confirmation in of itself.
Right. And I think that like the points is a great way to encourage people to actually use the protocol, and even to some extent sort of stress test of what's going on. However, even now what we're seeing is a great outflow from Eigenlayer because of where they've chosen to distribute this stake drop, which particularly in the US is not claimable. And I know that there's some other places that it's not claimable, that you're just like, okay, I've done all this stuff. I have all these points and they're completely useless because it wasn't clear to me that when you chose this stake drop at a later date, that I'm not even eligible. So
Okay.
what the heck am I doing in this protocol when I gave up this opportunity cost to go and use these tokens for maybe putting it into Aave or using any other protocol that allows me to use my staked ether? And this is something that is funny enough that Eigenlayer has announced that they're considering or have already even decided to increase the amount in their stake drop because of this backlash.
Wonderful. So in this era, we can see that tokens and all the tech that derives from this concept of tokens is very mature, like NFTs and so on. We can use it now for something else than just a fancy collector fetish. But it's interesting to see that now the era is about data availability and interoperability and how to query the blockchain in order to make this data available. So it's interesting to see that the number of projects that are both centered on interoperability, data availability or interoperability is skyrocketing at the moment. So that's obviously a trend that many companies will follow. And speaking of which, we're going to go further down the road of, data availability. Do you guys know about the Sui blockchain? So Sui, I suppose, comes from the Japanese word sui, which means water. So it talks about the smoothness, I believe. So what do you guys know about this blockchain?
Yeah. So to be honest, not a whole lot. I know that they came out of the Facebook Diem project, if anybody remembers that, which was years ago, shut down. And it was Sui and Aptos are two projects that came out of this.
That
And
got
yep.
separated, yeah.
And big thing is they're using like the Move protocol, which I believe has a lot of promise.
You know what I like about you guys is that every time I ask you the question, like, what do you know about this? Every time you are humbly giving me an expert response saying, I don't know much about it, but here's an anecdote about exactly how it works and how it's been created.
Well,
Anyway,
I couldn't tell you that, but yeah, I know the name.
so and you guys, I suppose, also know about Google, but Sui has started a great partnership with Google Cloud. The idea is to enhance all the Web3 innovation that has been performed by blockchain actors, but with the huge leverage of Google. So that means that querying the blockchain will now be doable through all the means that Google has in terms of data analysis, That's quite a huge thing. Their AI, the generative AI of Google, is going to be able now to help the Web3 developers debug their code and a few other things. And of course, they are saying that the infrastructure will be more scalable, which is always the weak point of the blockchain tech. So I don't know if this is going to be to prove to be true, but this is quite exciting. Zoe, what do you think about the claims of such a partnership? Is it going to empower the Web3 developers a bit more?
Definitely. You know, it's important to gain insight for various types of research as well as just developing on, any given um, ecosystem. So being able to do that is just, it says a lot. It says a lot. I mean, placement on Google Cloud specifically is meaningful because it's so commonly used.
Indeed.
Other places, it's a little bit more variable because it's not as commonly used, but GCP is a standard.
What I like also about that, tell me if you agree with that, but what I like about that is that you recognize the maturity of an ecosystem when the developers are not only good at programming algorithms, but when they're good at thinking architecture wise, and basically embracing Google standards might make them a bit more academic, a bit less original, but will probably also show that all the frameworks used in the SWI ecosystem is going to be a bunch of very robust algorithms, and so that's probably going to be interesting as well. That means that the products are going to be safer, I suppose. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, thorough understanding of architecture is key to, actually building a product rather than just being, a junior developer, for example. Again, because you have to design for certain things like, usability, security, really with any product.
Yeah, it's
Does it make sense as a product? Is it going to solve a business problem? And how do you best solve that business problem? How do you keep it secure? How do you design for privacy? There's so many, so much research, so many books, so many ongoing discussions about this for good reason, and that certainly pertains to essentially the future of finance.
that's funny because in my experience, like 80% of blockchain projects are basically little toys operated by junior developers with an IQ of 250. So that's absolutely bold, absurdly intelligent, but with that's totally clueless in terms of business and in terms of business intelligence. So what do you think about the business potential of this partnership between SUI and Google, Niles?
I, I think this is big. And if we're going to be honest, like the whole point of blockchain is this data availability, right? Is that we have this immutable blockchain that is a distributed ledger that allows us to go back and know that what we were looking at is real because of the 100 blocks before it. But to go and be able to query it through this massive Web2 company and using their tools is something that is really important because for the most part, like our gateway into Web3 is still Web2.
What I think is that many nodes. So from a business perspective here, what I think from Google, if I put myself in the people in the shoes of the people at Google, two things come to my mind. One is that they need to outcompete somehow to outcompete Amazon Web Services, and AWS is a huge provider of cloud instances that are used as nodes for many different blockchains. So if Google is now providing the same kind of service with a heavy hitter such as SUI, that could be a first step in this industry, and that could be a good move to try to eat some of the cake that was almost exclusively reserved to AWS, to Amazon Web Service. And another thing I think about is that Google might be inspired by WeChat or Yandex in Russia or WeChat in China. These guys are providing payment services. So in Russia, for example, Yandex is really the equivalent of Google Maps, Uber. Amazon, and PayPal. All of that in one huge company. So they have VK, which is their Facebook-style social network, and they have Yandex, which is a huge octopus. And in China, WeChat is doing the same thing. So maybe, in my opinion, maybe Google is willing to go down that road, and they needed a decentralized payment app that does the job because they know they are not doing it as well as the huge experts in this field. So maybe this partnership could also help them release something on the market, such as a payment solution to compete with PayPal or to other people like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's like a really interesting take on this. What I'm seeing is an increased credibility through the symbiotic relationship, where now Google is seen as helping out in blockchain, and Sui is like being able to tag, like, hey, look, Google is working with us, and both are able to sort of pump themselves, or each other, to be honest, that's probably a better way to look at it, into these really synonymous, or not synonymous, but like adjacent ecosystems that we both need each other. And we're seeing this foray for both into something that is working together, which, to be honest, like, we need this, because for too long it's been siloed and everybody is working on their own projects, and we're not seeing the true value being transferred between the Web 2 and Web 3 like we were seeing with Web 1 into Web 2.
Wonderful. That's going to be very interesting in the future. So, dear listeners, we advise you to follow this project closely. That's interesting for the
Not
future.
financial advice.
Yes, of course. No, not to invest on that. You guys do whatever you think is important, but we're not dispensing financial advice. We're dispensing insights on the evolution of the blockchain industry. But I'm flabbergasted by this partnership because this is huge. Having Google step in the ring is quite interesting. It's not only interesting, actually. It's fascinating. It's very and it's quite terrifying also from an ethical standpoint. If people think, oh, is Google going to do the same thing as WeChat or Yandex? Well, let's think about it as well. That could be interesting. And so now, on a more trivial note, to finish this lovely episode. How about I treat you guys with another lawsuit of the week?
Oh, I'm excited. Lay it on.
So, today we're going to see a person who manages his business much more smartly than Sam Bankman-Fried, because he received 4 months in prison for a company that is... 3? Oh, I thought 4. So only 3.
What? Wasn't it 3?
I guess it was 4. We'll check that. Well, dear listeners, tell us in the comments what you have found. But okay, you might have guessed we're talking about Zhao Changpeng. So Changpeng is his first name, and Zhao is...
You're right. It was 4.
So I was right. All right. So
You're right.
I'm checking my sources. Good. So Zhao Changpeng.
Well, this is why you're the captain.
So Mr. Zhao Changpeng is the former chief executive officer of Binance, so the CEO, and he has been sentenced in Seattle to 4 months in prison. He has pleaded guilty to violating U.S. laws against money laundering, and that's quite interesting because I would say that the ratio between the time spent in prison and the size of the company makes it, very profitable compared to the 25 years that Sam Bankman-Fried received, but also because Sam Bankman-Fried did legitimately shady and immoral things and scammed people, whereas Zhao Changpeng didn't do anything of that. Basically, the U.S. legislation is a bit different from what's happening in the home country of Binance. Basically, the idea is that Binance, and here I quote, Binance is accused of employing, starting the quote here, Wild West model that welcomes criminals, and Binance didn't report more than 100,000 suspicious transactions with designated terrorist groups such as Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic State. And so I assume there would be also many other types of transactions that would look shady. So, end of the quote. the quote has ended. I mean, and the idea is that, yeah, the lack of control and the lack of let's say espionage in the privacy of the users is perceived as a weakness. So, what was the expression you employed, Zoe? Slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
So it's probably just a wake up call saying, guys, if you want to do business in the US, you have to be very mindful of the way you spy on your customers. Now, what do you think about that, guys? The interesting thing here is, what do we make of this information? What do you think?
Well, I think the most interesting thing, to be honest, is that he even turned himself in. Right? Is that he chose to go turn himself in when he knew that he was facing prison time.
Mm-hmm.
And he has voiced regret and stepped down as CEO of Binance related to this, where, yes, what happened undoubtedly is true, where there was money laundering, in a sense, to illicit groups, but that he took responsibility. And he did make actions to try to make this right, in retrospect, right? Where Sam Bankman-Fried really hasn't shown any remorse and straight up stole from people, where this does feel very different.
Of course.
And CZ, I think, will come out better for it.
For our listeners, CZ is the abbreviation of Changpeng Zhao.
That's right.
I would also add that it's theater. To me, it looks like a theater piece, a theater play. I'm quoting the U.S. Attorney Tessa Gorman, and she told reporters outside the courthouse, so open quote, incarceration was critical in this case, and we're pleased with the result, end of quote. What kind of incarceration is that? Like 4 months? That's a vacation trip, and of course the guy is so rich that we can imagine that he's not going to spend time in Rikers Island, and he's not going to spend time in a 5 square feet cell with 2 rapists. So it's more symbolic than something else, which means that's more. To me, it sounds like a warning to other companies saying, do respect U.S. laws, and the U.S. government is okay with cryptocurrencies as long as you do respect these regulations, more than a real lawsuit. And I assume that Changpeng Zhao knew that he would just face something like a few months in prison, and he probably had a hefty bonus when leave. He probably received that in order to leave the company, and that's probably a bonus that the 4 of us would gladly accept to go to spend 4 months in prison for, I assume. But one thing, though, I'm interested in is, do you guys know the proportion of the total locked value of Bitcoin that is allocated to illegal activities such as terrorism, drug dealing, human trafficking, or something like that? Do you know what the proportion is?
I'm guessing like 2%.
2% is quite huge. You can go lower than that, actually. But basically, I read statistics the other day, and so if you took 100% of all the Bitcoin tokens in that are still live and active, still accessible by the users, if you took 100% of these tokens and allocated them exclusively to terrorism or drug dealing operations, that would be still less than 1% of the whole global money allocated to all these operations. So do we have to shame cryptocurrencies for something that is mostly performed in dollars or in euros, or do we do something else? And here, I like, so there's some kind of hypocrisy in this scheme, because the U.S. government is not going to sue itself for having US dollars transiting from one terrorist account to another. The European Union is not going to sue itself as well. But what I like is that at least they didn't say, oh, it's because of cryptocurrencies. They just said, you didn't respect the legislation, but you're not getting a huge penalty for that. It's just symbolic to show that that you guys have to be mindful in the future. So I like the fact.
Sure. Well, I do wonder, like, okay, when was the last time we saw any bank CEOs go to prison over this? Like, did not, like, Deutsche Bank gets in trouble with this quite a bit.
Of course.
And they're moving way, way more money than Binance is.
Of course. But I like the fact that prosecutor Kevin Mosley said, we are, open quote, we are not suggesting that Mr. Zhao is Sam Bankman-Fried or that he is a monster. So but basically they said the conduct is not a mistake. It's not a regulatory oops, but the guy is not a scammer. It's just that you have to comply with the law, and I like it. I like the fact that at least
fast and loose, and he's paying for it.
Yeah, what it shows us is that the public image of cryptocurrencies and of the blockchain industry is not, oh, it's an anti-money laundering, it's a money laundering scam. No, now it's more like, okay, you have to respect the rules, and that's just it. So it shows that the industry is getting mainstream. What do you think, though, Zoe?
Yeah, that's a key distinction. One is, pretty actively malicious, and the other is more, just passive, failed to meet a requirement. And I mean that is a key distinction in addition to the very different ways in which they responded. I mean, I've heard commentary comparing the way Sam Bankman-Fried behaved in the courtroom itself as similar to a serial killer. And I mean, again, no remorse. Like, and, I really don't think that that's a hyperbole. I really don't think that's an over-exaggeration. I think it's a decent comparison. I mean, doing all of that and then showing no remorse is just terrifying.
I must admit I felt the same way. I didn't see the same source as you, but I saw another one where he was invited at a cryptocurrency conference, and he basically started, very trivially, very joyfully, he started his own keynote saying, "Oh, the least I can say is that this wasn't my year," and everyone laughed in the audience. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, but it was a very the year was much harder for all the people you robbed of their assets and who probably will not. Sam Bankman-Fried will write a book and will even sell the rights of his own story to a Hollywood producer or something. He's never going to be poor. Whereas all the people he has scammed will be deprived of their assets, and it was probably part of their life savings for some of them. So I really appreciate the fact that CZ is not considered the same way, and that people are able to make the difference between all these people and the remorseless scammers on one hand, and the people who just failed to comply but who are by no means scammers. And I like that evolution of the public image of the blockchain.
Sure, yeah, and I really think that it is like the difference between doing something wrong and doing something maliciously. And I don't think that CZ, yes, there must have been a time that he knew this was going on, but it wasn't a way to intentionally try to be hurting people. It was just something that's going on, and they're not stopping. Which is very different than actively going and taking people's money for your own gain.
Absolutely. Any last word, guys?
I'm just excited to see where this goes.
Thank you so much for this lovely episode. Once again, everyone, this was Real World Blockchain, presented to you by Web3 Enabler. And I have a last announcement to make. Web3 Enabler is now becoming bigger, and so the name of our app on Salesforce is now Blockchain Payments by Web3 Enabler, because we have multiple projects going on. So
very exciting.
Stay tuned on our social media for more. Like, share, and subscribe. Bye, guys.
All right. Thank you.